Hey everybody, so today as I'm doing a beautiful walk in the Nelson Lakes National Park and I got to see an absolutely fantastic waterfall, I got to reflect a bit on the previous experiences that I had through my travel. So I thought we'd have a bit of a candid discussion about my biggest travel mistakes so you guys can learn from my mistakes and hopefully you make your travel a little easier. So without further ado, let's get started. Alright, so the first travel mistake that I've done in the past, and I've traveled in a lot of countries for many years, it is to pack too much. The first thing to keep in mind is that your carry-on can't get lost. So if you have anything important, pack it in your carry-on. But we'll talk about that a little bit later. Another thing to keep in mind is that in a lot of countries that you're going to be traveling to, you will be able to find the items that you need for said countries. If you need a certain item, well, it's highly likely that the locals, which are exploring the same country, which are living in the same country, are actually in need of the same item. So it should be readily available. There are obviously a few essentials to pack, but you really do not need to overpack. Having a huge luggage to trolley around in an entire country can be a major burden. Next up on our list, we have something to do with your flight. Picking very close connection can add a lot of stress to your trip, and sometimes if one plane is late, you may be missing out on your next plane, and therefore you're going to be losing a lot of time for your next for your adventure. You will have to reschedule a lot of places, a lot of items, and you also need to keep in mind all the different time zones when picking your connections. Remember, even if you're traveling with a travel insurance, well, it doesn't reimburse you for all the stress and the time lost. When you're traveling, every minute counts. You want to make the most out of your experience. And speaking about every minute counting, having a jam-packed itinerary is often not the best idea. Pick the things that you absolutely want to do in the destination you are visiting and add them to your itinerary. Then sprinkle only a few extra things, because if you're exhausted, you're going to enjoy yourself a little less. Okay, next on our list, we have not doing any research. So I know it's a little bit rich coming from me, which run travel guides in 5 or 6 different countries now, and which job is literally to inform you guys about all things to do with travel. But a lot of travelers are actually not doing enough research prior to their trip. There's a lot of things to take in consideration, such as things to do, but also the local cultures. In many countries, especially in the South Pacific, the local customs is actually to cover yourself quite a lot, even when going to the beach. So some travelers going there with, let's say, skimpy outfit, maybe not fitting so well. Other things to keep in mind and doing some research about are local phrases, operating hours. In a lot of countries, many things will be closed on a Sunday, as well as the weather, and the visa entry requirements, as well as vaccination requirements. Those are just the basics that you need to research, but yeah, make sure to check our travel guides if you want to know more. Alright, next on our list, we have not calling your bank to let them know that you're going overseas. I'll be honest with you, this one happened to me. I traveled to one of the countries in the South Pacific, and I didn't tell my bank that I was going there. My card got blocked, and I did not have access to any of my funds in New Zealand. So yeah, make sure to give a phone call to your bank and let them know what are your travel dates, so they don't flag your first transaction in the country and leave you without any cash. Speaking of being left without any cash, well, if you are not able to contact home, that may be a bit of a tough one. So researching the best phone plans is quite important when traveling the country, because, well, roaming is often extremely expensive. Plus, in some countries, roaming may not even be available. We ran a travel guide for the small country of Niue, for example, and there, depending on which operator you are using, roaming is simply not available, and you'd have to find yourself a local SIM. Another great options are eSIM, which are basically electronic SIM cards, which means that you don't have to get the physical thing. It's just something that you load on your phone. It's worth checking out. Next on our list, and this one is more of a money saving tip, is exchanging money at the airport. just don't do it. Often even just withdrawing cash at the ATM is actually better than actually exchanging cash. Withdrawing cash at the ATM is often better than exchanging cash at the airport. So keep that in mind, as you will be able to save 100 in your exchange fees if you do it smartly. Next on our list, this is a no-brainer, arriving late at the airport. There is a major difference between international flight and domestic flight, so keep that in mind when planning ahead. You want to arrive very early at the airport for international flight, as if check-in has closed, you may be missing out on your plane. Laura and I have seen people getting really angry as they were not able to check in for their flight because they arrived a little too late. We are making our way through that quite fast and I'm almost exhausted. Okay, so packing checked in and carry on the right way. So when you're packing your bags, there's a few things that you do need to keep in mind. First up, make sure to put all your items that include a battery. That is your camera, your hair dryer, no, not the hair dryer, your shaver, any of those kind of items, they need to go in your carry-on. So that will I almost fell. That will avoid you a lot of hassle at the airport, as you may have to open your luggage and transfer items from one bag to the other. We see that happening really often. Another thing to keep in mind is that, well, since your check-in luggage could be lost and your carry-on is unlikely to be lost, let's be honest, you may want to have at least one course of your medicine, an extra pair of drawers and a toothbrush in your carry-on to avoid being stranded without anything to do with your health and things that you really need when arriving in your destination. So keep that in mind. We do actually have full guides on that for each of our destination guides. And lastly, and that's, I think, in my opinion, one of the most important one, is that really often we see people being very negative about their trip. It's kind of human nature to remember the negative experience that you have, and have a stronger feeling about those than your positive experience. But it's highly likely that a trip to a destination is going to be 90% amazing, and you may have a few things going wrong, but don't let those ones define your trip and your experience in said country. Make sure that you actually take in the full experience and that you remind yourself of the epic things that happened to you, of the great experience that you had, and you don't dwell for too long on your negative experience. It's traveling is all about growing as a person, learning from your mistakes, other cultures, and the beautiful landscape that you got to see. So do make sure that you keep that in mind and you don't dwell too long on your negative experience. All right, this is going to wrap up this video for me. This video was sponsored by nobody else but us, so we're not going to try to sell you any VPN or website making systems. So if you feel like we are cool and we give you useful information, hit the like button. Bye bye.